I wanted to talk about sunsetting in Destiny. I know this is a pretty hot topic of debate, but I wanted to bring up a few points that most people overlook. Consider this more of a discussion of the foundation and what I see as the problem of the philosophies that are driving the decision for sunsetting. To start, it has become very apparent that the way Bungie balances the sandbox is based off player usage rates. In other words, Bungie looks at the stats of how often something is used or how likely something is to be used. A great example of this was the Izanagi's nerf, where Izanagi's was essentially being used for damage for everything. So what happens is Bungie sees that there's this huge percentage of players using Izanagi's, so the logic is that this thing must be too strong. This has happened many times before. 2 4-punch shotgunning, sleeper nerfs due to Gambit of all things, and many more examples. Now there's nothing wrong with having this philosophy along with other design philosophies, but in Bungie's case it seems like this is the only philosophy they use. But the truth is that this philosophy fails to understand a core fact about loot-based games. That being, there will always be a best-in-slot option for loot. A best-in-slot item is simply the best item that can be in the slot at a specific period commonly referred to as a meta weapon, or a BIS item. The reason that this philosophy doesn't understand the concept of meta weapons is because the player base will always gravitate towards the meta options, thus resulting in those weapons having the highest usage rates. I'll talk about what can be done along with a usage rate philosophy later, but first I want to show an example of what sunsetting will inevitably look like. Okay, so the assumptions here are the following. 1. We are starting the season only with new weapons that won't be sunset for the next year. 2. A BIS or meta loadout will exist and is the best available DPS option loadout. And 3. The only reason to disrupt the meta loadout is because there is a better weapon or a new best-in-slot weapon available. So let me go over how this graph works. On the vertical, there are relative power levels of loadouts available, with 1 being the most basic items available and 4 being the meta loadouts. On the horizontal, we have the seasons. So Season 1 is the beginning of a Destiny year, and Season 4 is the last season of a year. The orange line is the desired power creep through a year. This is a safe assumption because we know Bungie doesn't want power creep to actually take place, so there can only be a max and a min, and you spend the year going from a minimum to a maximum through the year. The blue line is what I'm predicting will happen. So basically what will happen is players will use the meta loadout in the first season, then due to the third assumption, the only reason to disrupt the meta loadout is because there is a better weapon or a new best-in-slot weapon available. Going into the second season, players have 2 options. A. Keep using what they are using, or B. Change what they are using. Case A only occurs when there is no better option from the new season for each slot, so the player's loadout is still the meta options. And B only occurs if there is a better option available. So in case A, we have a stagnation, and in case B, we have power creep. This will continue on for each following season. Players' items being unchanged or power creep will occur. So in case A, using the philosophy of player usage, the inevitable result would lead to Bungie nerfing those items because they are too common. And in case B, we get power creep. The entire system of sunsetting is supposed to stop this, so sunsetting leads to a contradiction. So sunsetting either leads to weapons being nerfed or power creep. The entire point of sunsetting is to prevent this kind of thing in the first place. So basically, sunsetting is just a band-aid being used for the usage rate philosophy. If Bungie wants to actually use a usage rate philosophy and keep power creep down, then there is an easy solution. Essentially make the best-in-slot weapons very hard to get, which inherently lowers the percentage of the total population that have these items. Think about it. If only the top 10% of players had Mountaintop, then you wouldn't see it 90% of the time, and people wouldn't think it's as big of an issue as they do now, thus not perceiving it to be broken or overpowered. An example of this for PvE would be something like this. Let's just for argument's sake say that a weapon required for the highest DPS is called Best Gun, but can only be acquired from something really difficult, for example, perhaps a solo flawlessing of Shattered Throne. This would do multiple things. It would reward players an equal reward for equal difficulty, and would also encourage players to try harder things, because without good rewards, many players would never attempt hard things. Again, in this example, a low percentage of the population would have Best Gun, thus allowing it to exist in the game where it is both strong without needing for other things to be sunset. Then what could be done is each season long, with the standard new loot being added, different best guns could be added to different aspects of the game, giving hardcore players something to chase every season. And if you aren't a hardcore player, then there's little to no reason that you would ever be doing something that requires best gun. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is that the current implementation of sunsetting is basically already broken at its core, because all it's going to do is make the fourth season meta the next year's meta, unless Bungie wants power creep. Because the only reason to change the weapons in that fourth season meta is if there's better options in the future. But if there's better options, then that means they break the game again. The power creep just gets out of hand at a certain point. Because at a certain point, if they want there to be no power creep, then they're going to have to say, okay, you're going from these really good guns to, okay, now you can't use any good gun. You have to use really bad guns so that next season it looks a lot better.